Welcome to the Podcircle podcast, where we bring practical tips and insights for every podcaster.
Whether you're just getting started or you're already a seasoned podcast pro, these conversations dive into all the topics that matter most to you. All right, guys, today you get to be a fly on the wall as I ask Kyle all of my pressing audio editing questions. So, a little bit of history. As you may or may not know, I've been working with Kyle for almost 4 years. He actually helped me launch the Living Centered podcast for the organization I work for in February of 2021. And in that time, I think Kyle has performed quite a few magic tricks for me to help make my show and later shows, because I now work with him on several different shows, sound the way our listeners have come to expect it to sound. Quality, concise, the type of thing you actually want to listen to. So as I was learning, he was with me every step of the way, and he has worked with me to improve our sound quality. At the beginning, I don't think it was as great a sound, but through little tweaks and his guidance and his expertise, it's really become a show I'm proud of. So I've placed complete trust in him, as we encourage other podcasters to do. And I outsource my weaknesses. We encourage you to do that on a regular basis. So today I'm asking him to pull back the curtain and ask questions that I've never really asked. I've just blindly trusted him to do it. So Kyle, let's start from the very beginning. Are you excited to hear all of my questions?
I'm really excited to hear them.
Okay, great. So first and foremost, every episode, I send you my files. I send you an intro. I send you individual host and guest tracks. I send you a combined track for you to be able to track. That's how I get my edit and outro, etc. I also sometimes do something that maybe not a lot of your other clients do. I actually give you a full list of time-stamped edits because I'm a little bit of a control freak. So what do you do with that?
Yeah. So if you send me a text document, the first thing I'll do is I'll pull that up. You've got some really helpful information in there, like you've already identified a teaser clip that you want pulled for me to go ahead and identify and pull that and put it at the very beginning of the episode. But even before I do any editing, the very first thing I'm going to do is just listen through the audio, just kind of spot check, look at the waveforms, which are just visual representations of the audio. Are there any points that seem to be clipping or too loud, distorted, that kind of stuff? I'm listening for that. And fixing those sorts of things with the amazing tools that audio correction and enhancement tools that I have and our editors have here at Podcircle. I'm listening for background noise and eliminating that or reducing that as much as possible. And then once I've done all of that to each track and everything it's sounding pretty good and pretty level, I'll then go and grab that teaser clip. So say it's at, the 30-minute to the 31-minute mark. Go ahead and grab that and set it to the side. And then I actually take your edits and I do them in reverse. So I'll start with, so if it's like a 30-minute episode, I'll actually start at the very bottom of the list and start making edits in reverse. And the reason I do that is because if I do it the opposite way and start from the beginning and I make an edit and it changes where things are laid out on the timeline, then all of your other timestamps they're no longer intact and they're irrelevant. So my rule of thumb that I use and that I teach our editors here is to process the audio first and then edit in reverse, especially if there are edit notes. So that's kind of what we do. And then once I have those edits that you have me make, which might be, 5, 10, 15 edits, then I'll go through and listen through the episode from top to bottom and just edit out anything that you might have overlooked or just filler words, like unnecessary overuse of filler words, closing gaps between maybe when you pose a question and someone answers, maybe they, if it's over Riverside, sometimes there can be that lag. So just making the conversation feel as normal as possible through quality editing. After all that's done, I'll take that. I'll import your, any kind of standard assets, intro music, outro music, any kind of ads, if those are relevant to the episode, place those and just really assemble the final product and then send it over to you for review. That's usually the process. And again, you and I, we work on audio podcasts only just with the ones that we work on at Podcircle. We also do a handful of video podcasts for our clients as well and follow a similar pattern for that. But obviously there's the visual element as well to the ads. So I guess some additional steps to it, but we'll stay in the audio world for now.
More complication. Yeah. And I think for people who aren't kind of sitting in a producer role like I am, where I'm really particular on how to tighten up that interview, and that's something I care a lot about, you have served as a really incredible producer for other people's shows and doing just what you were saying, going through, listening to elements of like, hey, I think we can shorten up here. Here's a filler word. Here's a weird gap. So you go and intentionally do that with other people that may not provide that level of detail that I provide as well. Yes. So I just want to call that out.
Yeah. And you're one of the few clients that actually sends an edit doc along with it, which is totally fine. It's fine either way for me. But I just want to say either way, we're going to listen through the full episode and clean it up and make edits and make the hosts and guests sound as good as possible.
So, like I said, you have performed a couple of what I would consider magic tricks because it's not my day-to-day, right? It's not the water I swim in. So I've had a few weird things happen with host or guest audio over the years. Can I walk you through a few what-ifs that people might have? And will you share us how you would fix it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so what happens if my track doesn't populate and I have to pull it from an internet backup? So I've had this happen before where a guest has some issues with their audio on the front end and it honestly didn't record their track at all. Mine recorded, but because we use Riverside, hint, always use Riverside, we had an internet backup. So you pulled that, and as a related follow-up, the track there is going to sound a little bit different than the quality track that I'm using my professional mic and recorded on the high quality Riverside. What do you do?
Yeah. So I remember a particular instance where you had a guest and they just had a partial high quality recording. So for some reason it cut off like halfway through. Luckily with Riverside, there's always that high quality backup, which is a fail safe that I love and sometimes it's necessary to use. So what I would do in that instance is I would take what we have of the high quality file for the guest, import that in, and then also download the internet backup, which is kind of a Zoom quality recording of that same track, and then import that as well. And then kind of line those up and then find where the high quality audio ends and then begin the backup audio there. And sometimes I'll put that on the same track if they sound pretty similar. The real downside of having to use the internet backup is that if there is a hiccup with an internet connection or anything like that, it's going to glitch and lag kind of like a Zoom call will. So that is why I'm also going to use that high quality file for as long as I can in the conversation and then just kind of stitch those together. In most cases, only a really keen listening ear is going to be able to tell the difference, to be honest with you. But a really high quality editor and a practiced editor is going to make that sound as seamless as possible.
Yeah. And I think in that situation, we ended up placing an ad right where the quality audio ended and the internet backup started.
Yeah, we just broke up the conversation. So it wasn't a stark difference. And honestly, I don't think anyone would have noticed the difference.
All right. And so my last question, because I had so many, we're going to break this up into two parts. So I have done this as well. I accidentally recorded myself and my in-person guest on the same track, and they're way louder. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah. So if you have multiple people on the same track, one person is loud, one person is quiet, and you're just kind of stuck with that single file. There's a plugin called Vocal Writer. It's by a company called Waves, which produces a lot of audio plugins. And it'll kind of identify the peaks and the troughs, like the low parts and the loud parts, and it'll help just kind of level them out. Before I do that, I'm going to do some other just audio processing and enhancing to help reduce any kind of background noise. That's also going to get louder as that quiet mic gets boosted up. So just things like that on the front end to help, but then really leaning on that Vocal Writer plugin. And then what we're always going to use is a lot of EQ or if necessary, EQ, a good bit of it, but also compression, which helps also just glue everything together, makes the really loud parts quieter, the quieter parts louder, and then just kind of gives a more consistent product.
So for those DIYers or someone who's saying, I don't want to be a DIYer, how many plugins do you use on a typical interview?
What I'm going to call my signal chain has probably 4 plugins on it. It's got an EQ, a compressor, a noise gate, a de-esser, and then all of the tracks together feed to another track, like a master track that has a limiter on it. And then I also, at the very beginning, I mentioned processing the audio and cleaning things up, kind of the more reparative, restorative type work. That's a whole other plugin suite that I use called Isotope RX, which is really, really incredible. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I never want to come down on freelancers or whatever, but a lot of folks are leaning on AI tools that do an okay job, but they're not going to get the kind of quality that a really quality audio editor, particularly someone who's been doing this for a decade and a half, is going to give you, really that attention to detail.
Yes. I think the number one thing I said when I took over the podcast and tried to launch it in 2021 was, I'm fine to do a lot of the content and the producing and the scheduling and the ideating and the marketing. I'm not touching the editing. That's not something I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I outsourced my weaknesses, because the more I get to know you and the expertise that you bring, it's like, I don't need that. So I can't speak highly enough of you at Podcircle and your skill set and your editor's skill set. So I'm done bragging now. It's just made my life so much easier.
Well, believe it or not, there's people that actually like this stuff and they like
I know.
like those sorts, and that's not everyone, and that's good.
No,
that's a good thing, because the stuff that you do is not in my wheelhouse. It's not in my skill set type thing, and I'm very happy to let you do kind of the front end stuff, so I can work on some of the back end post production things.
Totally. But if you're like me and this is not your bag, but you do want to produce a quality podcast, I really encourage you to reach out to Kyle and his team at kyle@podcircle.com, because I know all I have to do is send you my files and I will get back a super quality, well-produced podcast. So.
We love doing it. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, we'll see you next week when I bring more questions.
Sounds good.